something that I think is I look at Game Global and I see all of these debates and I see like coaches arguing back and forth and I'm better than you and things like this. And it kind of disappoints me. It disappoints me because the way I look at it is me, you, Marcus Wolf, Ice White, Lucario, anybody else, we're actually on the same side. And that side is there's a war on masculinity right now. There's loads of men who are lost and they're hurt and they feel lonely, they're miserable, things like this. And we're basically soldiers on the front line fighting against that. Another thing I think is it's like if you were to ask all of us 100 questions about women and dating, we're going to agree on like 80 of those 100.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So the the arguments, like I've seen like you arguing with Marcus Wolf, I've seen you arguing with Lucario, and I'm not blaming you for these debates, but I'm just saying that when I look at it, it's like it feels to me like the difference between Shia Muslims and Sunni Muslims, where like they both more or less believe the same thing, but they're getting really annoyed about the tiny discrepancies that they have. So anyway, I'm doing this conversation as well as conversations with other coaches to try and like bridge those gaps and also get to know the person behind the coach as well.
Yeah, yeah, no, man. Listen, everything you're saying, I agree with. So, I think that there's definitely more common ground than not. But like, I think one of the reasons the debates exist is because to flesh out those nuances. So, like, for example, if you're just a guy that needs to improve his game, you should listen to everybody and anybody and kind of, take it all in, learn from everyone, right? But then there's like the guys that really get into the nitty gritty of this and they want to hear like a more nuanced discussion or more nuanced debate. I would really prefer to have these as discussions where we find common ground and we politely disagree with one another. They've kind of evolved into this shit show. And I think, you know, I would agree with a lot of these guys on the majority of concepts, but the point of the debate is like what works the majority of the time. So for example, I had the debate with Marcus, right? Fast escalation versus solid game, as I like to call it. And the question is not whether one style works or the other doesn't. They both work. It's just which style has a bigger burn rate, which style is going to be more consistent. So I think if guys want to play a faster escalation style of game like Marcus does, they're free to do that. I think everybody should run their game the way they want to, but that wasn't the debate. The debate wasn't should guys run game the way they want to. The debate was which style of game is going to be better the majority of the time. So I entertain these debates. I join them. I mean, they're kind of fun. I have fun with it. I mean, other people might get really angry and stressed out and go home and pout after these debates. Even when they turn into shit shows, I just kind of laugh it off and I think they're fun. And if they get more people into this and more people engaged, great. I do worry about the guys that get turned off by it, the guys that just really need help. And now they're turned off because they watch this and they're like, fuck it, my life's over. I'm never going to get good with girls. I'm never going to understand these nuances. Uh, so anyway, I definitely err more on the side of your thinking as well. I think we should be together. As far as the war on masculinity goes, I mean, there is definitely strong evidence that, there's always been kind of a war, I think, on masculinity in some form or another, but there's definitely solid evidence that it's a more concerted, like a more organized effort now, especially in certain countries where the war on masculinity is almost like mainstream. But on the other side, I do believe that there's kind of a war on femininity as well, you could say. It's just more marginalized and more underground, I guess you could say. It's not mainstream, right?
You know what? I would actually agree with what you're saying. So my question is then, so for anyone who either hasn't seen you in a debate or has but hasn't really managed to download this information, what is your approach to game? How do you structure it? How do you teach men? How would you describe your ethos?
So I definitely believe in customizing my approach to each guy. So what I like to do is I like to teach a guy a comprehensive understanding of the game. I want him to understand different methods and systems and structures. I want him to understand natural game and freestyle and the idea of just going out there and getting lots of reference experiences and trusting that your mind will sort of put the puzzle pieces together on its own. I want them to understand direct game, indirect game. I want them to understand fast escalation, slower escalation. I want them to understand all the different science out there. I want them to learn as much as they can about the game in a comprehensive way. Then I also teach them what I've found works best for me personally. And then I want to take all of those elements and put together kind of a customized system for each guy, whether he wants a more scientific, methodical, systematic approach to this, whether he prefers to be more natural and free flowing with it. I do my best to customize to each guy as opposed to saying, this is what women want, therefore you should be this guy. I'm not really that coach, unless a guy wants that. If he wants to know what are women attracted to by and large according to the hard science, then certainly, look, we can throw away your personality and let's just build you a totally new personality from the ground up according to the science. If that's what you really want, I'm okay with that. The only real strict rule I have is one of being a person of integrity. You want to hook up with a bunch of women and do pickup, you want to find that one special person, you want to do whatever. I do believe in being a person of integrity and honesty and respect. This is not a sleazy, manipulative thing for me. So,
All right, so can you give me an example then of how you would coach two men? So you've got one guy who wants to get into the weeds and he wants to develop a really structured and formulaic style of game. But then you've got another guy who wants to be very free flowing and creative and expressive and more, let's say, in the moment. So how would you guide those men towards those different outcomes?
yeah, so the first thing I would do for the guy that's more of the systematic nature is I would teach him my system, the Vortex. More specifically, it's called the Vortex of Love. That's the title of my book that's going to be released in a month or so. It's more than a system, it's a super system, I call it, because it's not just a step by step process. It's like once you understand the vortex, you can create your own customized system out of it. So I'm going to teach him the vortex and teach him how to come up with a structured approach to this, an adaptable, customizable, flexible approach to his game, right? Once I teach him that, I'm going to possibly teach him a few other methods and systems peripherally of other coaches. But once you sort of understand the vortex, respectfully, it's extremely advanced. Like it's, I'm going to sound cocky for saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I believe it's the most advanced system that currently exists. And once my book is launched and people like you who are into game, other people that are really into this stuff that understand the game on a nuanced level, I hope you read it and agree with me that, hey, this is next level shit. So I teach guys my system and then ask them just how systematic do you want to get with this? Because we can get it down to the point where you're creating routines and material and scripts, authentic material that's congruent with your life. It's not make-believe material, but we can develop this stuff down to a really fine detail. So you understand the high-level structure and system, and then you fill it in with material from your life, right? The guy that's on the more free-flowing side of the spectrum that just wants to do more natural game, I'm going to teach him about frames. I'm going to teach him about mindset. I'm going to teach him about state. I'm going to teach him how I developed my game naturally, because I'm actually a blend of natural and synthetic. So before I even discovered this idea of technical game, I did pretty well for myself in high school and even after high school for a few years. I wasn't the most popular guy in my school, but all of my good friends were the most popular guys in school. So I definitely did better than most guys did when I was younger. So I'm going to teach him the things that got me good at the game naturally. And then I'm going to teach him a bunch of other principles that deal more in the realm of natural game, like state, mindset, frames, and so forth.
So it's interesting because when I got into game, which is a long time ago, like I discovered Dave D'Angelo's Double Your Dating literally back in 2001. It's been a long time, like a long time. Anyway, when I got into that, I spent maybe 5 years or so being very, very systems and process oriented. And whenever I was out and I was about, I was meeting women or I was on dates, I was basically running routines in my head. For me personally, it worked. It worked incredibly well. I got great results from it in terms of meeting women, attracting women, and ending up sleeping with those women and they wanted to see me again. What happened to me personally was that I became very reliant on these routines. So like I would have, let's say, like stories, and in my head I'm like, okay, I've said that story. Okay, so that story's out the way. I've said the dolphin story, but now there's the giraffe story and things like this. And it wasn't like I was really connecting with the woman. It was like I was trying to solve a Rubik's cube. That's how it felt. I was like a hacker trying to hack into a mainframe. Then what happened with me was I reached a point where I'd used up all of my routines, and then once I'd used up all of my routines, I had nothing to fall back on. After once the routines were gone, then all of a sudden it was just me. But because I hadn't done work on myself, then I freaked the hell out. And then from the perspective of the woman I was talking to, it's like, hold on, who's this guy now? He was really cool, confident, and sexy before, and now he's the exact opposite. So then I went down the route of just saying, you know what, screw this, I'm actually just going to become natural. And that's kind of the angle I've gone down. But I think your approach is very interesting because you're basically speaking about a hybrid of the two. And if I'm going to be very honest with you, I totally do believe that the non-natural side of game is the best way if you just want to maximize your results. Like if the goal is to sleep with 100 women as quickly as possible, the scientific approach is literally the best way. Mm. So for me personally, I agreed to take a hit on my results to feel like I was being authentic.
Yeah, no, listen, that's another thing that I definitely will stress to a guy. Look, there are pros and cons to both sides of this, and you've definitely outlined some very real cons to the systematic side of this, right? If you run out of material, then what do? You have nothing to fall back on, right? But if all you do is natural game as well, if your mind goes blank, what do you have to fall back on? So I do believe that there's a way to fuse the two, and I believe that there's a way to do it honestly and authentically. So for example, let's say you have a really good product or service of some sort. Is it manipulative or dishonest or disingenuine to learn a sales system, to learn a system that effectively communicates the product that you have? Well, I guess if you don't really have a good product, you don't really back up your product with a good warranty, or it's really just you're selling bullshit, then maybe using a system to trick people into thinking you have a good product is manipulative. But I definitely believe in building a guy up, making sure he has certain things in order in his lifestyle, and then teaching him, again, a blend of systematic and natural game, showing him the pros and cons of both sides of the spectrum. If he prefers to lean to one side or the other because that's the way he's wired, then so be it. So like I have some clients that are on the autism spectrum, for example. They greatly benefit from having a more systematic approach. It's robotic almost, but that's the way their brain works. So they're not necessarily being disingenuine. And if I wish I could teach them to freestyle a little bit more, I could teach them how to be more in the moment, but they're not quite wired that way. So I completely hear what you're saying. And I went down a similar road as well when I first got into game. I was running game just according to the script. Mystery said do this, right? Mystery was the big name at the time in the mid 2000s with pickup, and there were all these other pickup artists. Like, this person said do it this way, so I would do it very strictly. But what I eventually realized was, again, like you, I felt weird using the routines. I ran out of material. I felt like I want to kind of incorporate more of a natural spin on this. So I started doing more freestyle stuff and more state dependent game and building myself up as a person, building my confidence from the inside out. And I got some really good results from that. What made me kind of come full circle back to structure was coaching and realizing that just because my path was I learned structured game and then natural game. There were still guys that needed help with structured game, but I didn't really like all the structures and systems out there. I thought some of them were good. The M3 model developed by Mystery is a very solid system, but I wanted to develop my own system. So that's why I created the Vortex. So you get the best of both structured and natural game. Very difficult needle to thread. Um, but I think I've done that.
So how would you describe the Vortex?
So the vortex, first of all, the shape of the vortex is fundamental to understanding kind of some of my high level paradigms through which I view the game. So it's shaped like a funnel. It's not a step by step linear system, it's shaped like a funnel. The reason that it's shaped like a funnel is to remind us that there are certain forces at work here that are outside of our control and understanding. So when in the presence of a woman where there's chemistry, where there's some kind of attraction, there's some kind of potential, we may start to feel this almost rotational like spinning magnetic force pulling us together, right? That represents the shape of the vortex. It reminds us that this game is not all about doing, doing, doing. It's also about being present. It's being tuned into the woman. It's recognizing that there are natural forces of attraction. Mother Nature, the universe is at play here as well, right? Now, within the shape of that vortex, did you want to comment on that?
Well, yeah, because so I'm writing a book which is about to be released very soon. It's called The Primal Gentleman. And it's about effectively a man embodying animal magnetism and what makes a bad boy attractive, but without losing his heart and his soul. And you're speaking about this presence and the charge that exists between a man and a woman. And that's something that I write about quite a lot, which is like so masculine energy, strong, powerful, dominant, warrior, protector, provider. Feminine energy, soft, accepting, nurturing, things like this, welcoming. And the two have opposite charges. But then when they get together, it creates this tension. And what men need to learn to do is to lean into that. But it's like you stand there and you feel the energy and you embody your side, you embody your masculinity with no shame, with no fear. You're not ashamed of who you are, you're proud of it. At the same time, you're calibrated to where the woman's at. So, for instance, you're not going to give her a 10 if she's only at a 3 or a 4. You know, you're not going to give her an 8 if she's only at a 5. So, you're meeting her where she is, but kind of leading her and guiding her through. Again, I guess we would call it a vortex of attraction. And yeah, I'm just impressed to hear you say that.
Yeah, no, man, I'm definitely interested to read your book, man. I hope you read mine too. So yeah, that's the first thing to understand about the model is the shape of it is crucial because many guys that get into this game are just doing, 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 and they're not allowing, they're not present, they're not aware of this charge that you speak of that exists because they're too caught up in their head, they're too caught up in doing, right? Well, the other end of that spectrum are the guys that just allow everything to happen, on its own. They just take whatever opportunities float their way. There's nothing proactive about their game at all. It's just a game of allowing, right? Well, that's where the four elements come in. So I basically have broken love down into four key elements. And if we build these elements up to what I call equilibrium, we basically will spiral all the way down the funnel and fall in love. So this is not a book that's just about getting laid. It's not just taking a woman from meat to sex. It's actually taking you from meat to love.
Interesting. That's interesting. All right, would you be willing to tell me then what the four elements of falling in love are? Like, you'd have to go too much into detail, but if you could just name them.
I wanna save that for the book.
No worries. No worries, but that's fascinating.
Yeah, so but what the four elements do is they give us four high level targets to hit. So now the game is not just about allowing everything to unfold, it's one part allowing, one part doing. And the four elements represent the doing part of this. these are the four targets that we want to hit. And if we can bring these up to equilibrium, they all kind of fuse together. And that gives us, now when we build out different tactics and techniques and we develop material, we can kind of make that material correspond to the different elements. So that's the structured side of the game. This is how the natural and structured side of game are kind of fused together. That's kind of the Vortex in a nutshell. There's more detail to it as well. We can take, for example, I'll give you one more example. So we can take the four elements and we can line them up as if they're steps in a linear process. And then we can actually rearrange them in different orders and make them have multiple, you can come up with multiple linear systems by rearranging the four elements. I call these the 5 paths, by the way. So there's 5 common pathways to love. So I'm teaching guys to allow things to unfold. I'm teaching them the proactive doing side of the game. We can build tactics and techniques designed to target these 4 elements, and we can arrange them in different ways to create linear systems out of them. And then there's a kind of a conclusion that I don't want to spoil as well at the end of the book that kind of just brings all of these concepts together.
When you say allow things to unfold, are you speaking about allow feelings to unfold between you and the woman, or are you saying allow physical occurrences to happen? As in, for instance, I'm with a woman. Am I allowing the attraction to build? Am I allowing, let's say, goosebumps to appear on my skin? Am I allowing my breath to heighten? Am I allowing myself to feel the energy rush through my body as I get aroused? Is that what you're saying? Or are you saying I'm allowing or something to happen with regards to the woman? Like maybe she does something on her own, undirected by me, but then I take advantage of that and then guides the interaction in a certain direction. You understand what I'm saying?
Great question. And I would say it's both. It's absolutely both. It's the idea that we're not completely in control of all of this, you know? So to give you like a practical example, like, let's say that you give a woman a compliment of some sort. Let's say you're a little deeper in the interaction. Maybe you don't compliment her right off the open, but at some point you look at her and you're like, you are really, really interesting. Do you know that? And you smile and you sort of let that tension build. You let that masculine, feminine tension build. Uh, a lot of guys can't handle that tension and they're tempted to say something on top of that and something on top of that and then try to guide the interaction and move her over here and do, right? No, sometimes you need to say something. You need to allow that moment to sort of reverberate and let attraction sort of build and peak, right? And then you can do another thing. So it's, once again, this is very abstract. This is one of the more abstract parts of the book, but it's designed to get a guy out of doing mode and more like present to the moment and aware of sort of these sensations that can rise up into the body. It's reminding guys to play the pauses and so forth, right?
You saying that lets me know. I'd be willing to bet you're a spiritual guy, aren't you?
I'm a little bit of both. So again, I'm kind of a mix. Like I do like getting into spiritual topics and esoteric stuff and talks about God and the universe and existentialism and all sorts of stuff. But then there's the other part of my brain that's like, maybe that's all just mental foolery and maybe we should just be looking at reality and the science of everything. So I'm actually kind of a mix of both.
So I have found that what you're saying is very true. There's a lot of power that comes in actually knowing when to shut the fuck up. I'll tell you when I realized it as well. So years ago, this must have been like 2007 or 2008. I used to take a lot of drugs, right? And I'm out at a club and I'm on ecstasy and I'm with this girl. Now, I was unable to speak. Like I just couldn't say a word. Like whatever it was, whatever that pill had done to me, it's like my vocal cords were not working that evening. But I'm with this girl. And the only thing that I could do was just be present with her. Was to just let my eye contact speak for me. I did not have the ability to talk. Surprise, surprise, that woman was the most attracted to me that I'd ever seen up until that point. The most attracted. And then another thing I found as well, it's like, like men are on dates or they're with women and they want to fill every silence with words. But actually, if you can sit there in a silence and be totally comfortable with the fact that that silence is there, that's really powerful. Another thing I've learned is this, it's like we can learn things to do and say when we're in front of women, and it works to a massive degree. But like you said earlier, there's a percentage of this that's going on that we have actually no choice over whatsoever. I remember I went to a tantric sex seminar in Ubud in Bali. This was like 5 years ago. And this fact was just thrust in my face then because we're there for like 2 days. There's about 15 men and there's 15 women, and everyone's kind of hot and sexy. At the end of the first night, we did this exercise where all of the women were sitting at a gigantic circular table. All the women are just sitting there and they're all dressed up in their finest, sexiest outfits. Every man had to spend 2 minutes eating a meal with each woman in succession. So the women are just sitting and the men are moving around. I noticed very quickly that you would have, with one woman, it would be explosive from the get go. Just explosive. There was just something in the air. And with another woman, it's like you just wanted the time to be over. But it actually wasn't. It wasn't all about like looks. There was something else just going on. There was like a connection between two people. There was one woman, I'll never forget this. There was a woman who I'd never I'd never even contemplated her that whole time that we were there. Like she just wasn't my type. She wasn't I as far as I was concerned, she didn't exist. I sat next to her. Me and that woman had the single most explosive, energetic sexual encounter that I had had at during that whole exercise. And it was someone who, from the look of her, I just didn't even think twice of her. And there's something going on between like a man and between a woman. There's like something kind of in the air which men don't really know how to harness. But that's something that I work on a lot, and it sounds like it's something that's very important to your work as well, which is intriguing.
Indeed, indeed. When I was younger and I was just coming into my own, it was a lot of doing, trying to make things happen. And just by sheer volume and determination, I got results, right? But as I got older, I sort of learned to slow down a little bit, get settled into my center, be present. And then this whole new world sort of opened up to me. And I felt almost embarrassed. I almost felt like there was a world that existed that I wasn't even aware of, that other people were aware of, and they were just waiting for me.
Yeah, like how had you lived so long without realizing this was possible?
Exactly. And like you said, I do think that generally speaking, women are a little bit more tuned into this than men. We're a little bit late to the game in slowing ourselves down and learning to be present and comfortable and rooted and centered with a woman. We are sort of the built to hunt and keep moving forward, and when you learn to slow down and observe and become aware of your surroundings, you realize a lot of women are tapped into this centered place. So no, I can definitely relate to that one, man. And I had another thought. It escaped me. It's escaping me at the moment. But yeah, no, good stuff, man. I know the feeling. Oh, I remember. I remember what I was going to say. This is also what you were saying about how you would sit down with some women and there was sort of nothing there, and other women there was like immediately something. This comes down to the idea too of like, can we manufacture attraction? Can we actually run our game and build attraction with somebody where it doesn't actually exist? Or is attraction something that either exists or doesn't exist with somebody else, and we just need to uncover it? So I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if I can actually build attraction with a woman or if I'm really just uncovering attraction that's already there. And I do know that if we're too focused on gaming and we're over gaming, for example, I think we can very easily fail to uncover attraction. If we're under gaming, we can fail to uncover attraction too, certainly. But
All right, so you've said something very interesting. Essentially, is attraction an energetic bond that already exists between two people, or is it something that can be built up in a structured way? I think it's both. Like, I genuinely think it's both. I think, in the rawest, most real sense of the word, I think attraction is like this energetic bond. But at the same time, every man watching this video, at least most of them, and I've had this happen, I'm sure you've had this happen, where there were women who wanted nothing to do with you at first, but eventually thought you were the sexiest man on earth because of the game you'd run on them. So I don't really have a strict answer, but I think it's both.
the question though still kind of comes down to, did we run our game and create attraction that wasn't there, or did we run our game and break down walls that she had and uncover latent attraction that actually did exist? So yeah, and I don't know if there's any way to answer that in this lifetime, but I think about stupid shit like this,
Was the attraction always there to begin with, or was it manufactured? I don't know, man. I don't know, because, like, okay, here's something I suspect, right? And we're getting a bit, well, we're getting slightly off topic, but when I look at gay people, they've never found a gene that creates a gay person, right? And when you look at gay men, apparently there's a large correlation between men who identify as gay and people who have been sexually abused, like by other men at a young age. Which implies to me that there's a at least a significant percentage of men who are gay, but really it's like a fetish. Like fetishes are, you're not born with a fetish, it develops as you get older. Right, so I think, and I might be wrong, I think there's a percentage of people who identify as gay where actually, if they were raised in a different circumstance, would have turned out to be straight. But they developed the gay fetish. So if that can happen, I mean, and I believe that is manufactured, just like fetishes are manufactured. I don't think there's a latent fetish in everybody for leather or PVC. So maybe you can make a woman fetishize you. I don't know.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting thoughts. And I don't know how accurate this is or not, but I heard that there's an overwhelming number of men that turn to homosexuality when serving life sentences in prison.
Well, there you go. There you go. So, before we go, tell me about you. Tell me about Mr. Erik. Tell me about Mr. A Blaze. How the hell did you get into this space? Because I would imagine you have a bit of a superhero origin story where you originally had some form of pain. Maybe, maybe not. What's the story?
Yeah, there was some pain there. So I did have some natural game growing up. I put myself in social situations. I threw myself very hard into social situations. And I did have a very negative voice, though. I wasn't a true natural because I believe the true naturals that I grew up with, some of my best buddies, they didn't seem to have to try as hard as I did. And maybe that's just the way I perceived it. Maybe they were dealing with their own demons and battles too, but they always seemed to just naturally be able to attract women. I was able to naturally attract some women, but I always seemed to have to try harder than everyone else. And I had a really negative voice. I was very hard on myself. I beat myself up. So a lot of my success early on was driven by fear and ego and so forth. But I went through a really bad breakup in my early 20s, like that first one that gets you where you're like, oh my God, my life is over. My girlfriend dumped me, right? The world is coming to an end. That was in my early 20s, and it drove me to Googling, how do I get my ex-girlfriend back? And that's when I discovered the wacky world of dating coaches and pickup artists and seduction gurus and so forth. So I knew when I discovered this stuff without a shadow of a doubt that I would be a coach someday. I just knew it. As soon as I discovered it, I went, oh my God, like I'm meant to do this. I don't know to what degree I'm going to do it. I don't know how far I'm going to take it, but I knew instantly that I wanted to be a coach. And I threw myself super hard into the game, just learning everything I possibly could. I was in my early 20s at the time. We're going back 19 years ago. So I had no powers of discernment whatsoever. If a guy had a website, he was legit. That's, I thought if you had a website on the internet, you must be legit. So if you had a website and you posted advice on dating, I read it, I went out and I applied it without thinking, right? I was not hindered by self reflection whatsoever. And I think that served me well in the beginning because it kept me in a mindset of taking action and not over analyzing. I just went out and did lots of approaches, tried everything that was suggested to me. And little by little, my game sort of calibrated. I started coaching in my mid 20s for a little part time, a small little company in Chicago I was coaching part time for. And then after about, what's that?
What was the company?
Oh, I don't think he's even around anymore. I'd rather not even mention the name and everything. But listen, when I started working for him, I told him that I would be starting my own company one day. And he was really upset when I left. But in my defense, I was doing all the coaching calls. I was creating all the curriculum. I was flying around the country working with guys. I was basically running the whole company. So I went and started my own company at age 30 after working for him basically part time for about 4 years, 5 years. Ran my own company for a few years. Then I reached out to none other than Mystery from the VH1 show, The Pickup Artist, and as featured in Neil Strauss's best-selling book, The Game. And I quickly became good buddies and business partners with Mystery. And I traveled to multiple countries in the world, coaching with him, doing live online workshops. Fast forward a few years later, I'm 41 years old now. So we're from the start of the story till now, it's been 19 years. I just did a rebrand. I'm now datingcoachformen.com. I've written a 250,000 word book called The Vortex of Love. I'm doing boot camps all over the US with Mystery as well. We're doing a Nashville boot camp in 1 week. We've got Chicago boot camp, New York, Las Vegas, Miami. We're doing live online workshops. So basically, I'm doing my own business and my own coaching. I'm partnering up with Mystery, and I'm very, very excited about my book. I put my heart and soul into this book. Truly, I wanted to change a lot of lives. The Vortex of Love. It will be released probably in the next month or two. The manuscript is done. Now I'm dealing with ISBN numbers and graphic design and cover design and all the sales and marketing stuff. But the manuscript itself is done. So that's me in a nutshell.
All right. That's brilliant. Quick question. You said that once you discovered this stuff, you just absolutely knew, like you knew you had to dive in. Do you remember the moment when you were like, "Oh my gosh, this is life changing"? Because I've got two moments like that. I was wondering if you got one for you.
I mean, it was honestly pretty much the moment I discovered it because the light bulb that went off in my head was that I could grow this like any other skill. And to some people, that's common sense. But to 22-year-old Erik, 23-year-old Erik, that was just a total mind blower because in my mind, you either had game or you didn't have game, or I would go out and I would run my game, but I never thought about like codifying what I was doing. I never thought about backward engineering it into the written form or drawing diagrams or coming up with systems. So that moment that I realized that I could take a scientific approach to my game and an artistic approach, not just the science, but the science and art mixed together, and I could focus on it like going to the gym and building muscles or training martial arts or whatever. That was a mind-blowing idea to me because I was already kind of girl crazy. I know that most guys in their early 20s are thinking about girls a lot, but I was really girl crazy. I was really social. I was really just wanting to experience a lot of life, and I was wanting to date a lot and hook up and like a lot of young 20 something year olds. So just that notion right there was just like it blew me away.
All right. So for me, it was so um I must be 19 years old. I'm at home late at night. I'm on my PC. Desktop computer, not even a laptop. That's how long ago it was. Now, at that time of night, I could only have been looking at porn. I mean, I don't know for a fact, but what else was I looking at that time? Pop up just comes up and it goes, everything you know about women and dating is wrong. I was like, excuse me? All right, let me have a look. My name's David D'Angelo and I've got a book. This book is going to change your life. Now, I'm so convinced this book will change your life that I'm going to give you a free chapter. Read this chapter, then when your mind is blown, buy the book. My mind was blown by that chapter. For the life of me, I can't remember what was in it. I really can't. I can't remember what the hell it said, but I was like, oh my gosh. I bought the book. And the crazy thing is, the book was probably about $30 in today's money, maybe 40. I'm not sure, but I do know that I barely had that money in my account. So I had to like clean out two bank accounts to like scrape the money together to buy the book. I read it in one night and things have never been the same since. One thing I do remember, and this was when it was like, oh my gosh, this is the thing for me. He had some tip about something to do when you're with a woman. And again, I can't remember what it was. This was like 24 years ago now. But I remember being at a nightclub and I remember I'm talking to this girl and I did it. Whatever it was, I did it. That woman looked at me like I was the single sexiest man she'd ever seen in her life. I'd never had a girl look at me like that before. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then, yeah, here we are. Quarter of a century later, now I'm helping men to do the same thing.
Yeah, amazing, man, amazing. Yeah, I remember those first moments of trying a tactic or technique and having it work. And then, was it the tactic or technique, or was it our belief in the tactic or technique? I eventually
Maybe,
realized.
right?
What's that?
Maybe.
Maybe. Yeah,
Maybe. What's the belief?
I do believe that a lot of what I was doing was acting as a placebo because I had such faith in what I was doing. I think that a lot of these women were more drawn to my confidence and the rock solid faith that I had when I was executing something. And not to say that all the techniques didn't work. I think that, like, if we're being realistic, back in those days, in the mid 2000s and early 2000s, right? I would say about 80 to 90% of the advice was only like partially true or only like worked within given circumstances, and I would say 20% of it was like legit and worked with pretty good consistency. So if you executed everything you learned with rock solid faith, you're going to get a certain amount of wins from that, right? And then you'll dismiss a lot of your failures as anomalous. And so yeah, if I would do something, if it didn't work, I would think there was something wrong with the woman, or I didn't execute the technique properly. And little by little, I realized that, hey, these aren't absolute truths with a capital T, as Ross Jeffrey says, right? He always says that what I'm saying is not truth with a capital T, it's true with a lowercase t. Uh, those were the days, though, man, weren't they? I remember the magic when I first got into it, that high. You get high on this stuff almost.
All right, so one more question just come to mind, which is, can you remember a major fail you had in your earlier days?
Oh, how much time you got, man? Which one to choose from? You know what I mean? There's just too many. Let me think of a major fail that I had.
Well, okay, I'll tell you one of mine while you're thinking. I'm at university or college, as you guys call it, and I guess for some reason, I was trying to be Mr. Flamboyant and Mr. Cocky that night. And I was wearing like a really crazy shirt. I was trying to peacock and I was just trying to be Mr. Cool and funny that night. I was really trying. Anyway, I was talking to some girls and I was talking to one and I called her a beefcake jokingly, right? Yeah, I called the girl a beefcake. Now, I'm just trying to be cocky, I'm trying to be funny, I wanted to make the girl laugh, blah, blah, blah. Actually, the girl starts crying. And, but like properly crying. Crying like I said something horrible to her. And then a friend hates me and, oh, you're an asshole, you're a piece of shit. What's wrong with you? You're a cunt. And like, I was really bothered by it. Like, my whole mood changed. I went home. I'm sitting on my own. Like I'm back at my apartment, and I'm like, oh God, I never want to do this again. Like I can't. It was just so horrible. Like I wanted to make the girl happy, but I actually made her cry. And yeah, like that's it for me.
Oh man, I definitely have had moments where I overnegged or I said something meant to be sarcastic and humorous and it was perceived the wrong way. But here's a big fail that's coming to mind. So I remember I went to this sorority party and it was just filled with women. It was a majorly skewed ratio. It was just me and a few guys and just a party full of sorority girls. And I was really, really attracted to this one girl, and her friend was like slightly less attractive, but still really attractive. I thought I had a better chance with the slightly less attractive friend. So I basically like ran my game on her like super hard, right? And it was one of these nights where I was just being very out in the open with it. Like I'm a fan of doing direct game, indirect game, everything kind of in between, especially when building attraction, right? I'm not doing it in a manipulative way. I'm just that's the game of stoking attraction, right? Sometimes it's not so in your face. Well, for whatever reason that night, I was in a mood and I decided to be very upfront and direct with my game. So I'm flirting with this girl. I'm being shameless about it. She's crossing her hands. Like, every time I walk up to talk to her, she's like, "Oh, you again." And I'm like, "Yep, I'm here to flirt with you. I'm here to charm you." I was just shameless about it. And she's like, "Well, it's not happening," and like I chat with her and we talk and whatever. But anytime I tried to move the dial forward as far as like, "Hey, I like you, you like me," right? She's fucking stopping it, right? She's putting walls up. Well, I found out later from a mutual friend that the reason that she was putting walls up and she wouldn't entertain me is because the more attractive friend that I actually was more interested in was into me and thought that I was attractive. So her slightly less attractive friend, in my eyes, was not accepting my advances because of her friend. So don't shoot yourself in the foot, I guess, is the moral of the story. Go for what you want. But that's the way that night, panned out for me.
Yeah. Yeah, there's been loads of times when I've been in a similar situation where actually the more attractive woman is the one who wanted me and the lesser attractive woman didn't. But all right, so we're about done. But before we go, one final question: who is your favorite superhero and why?
Am I allowed to say Neo from the Matrix?
I guess.
Yeah. I mean, because here's the thing, man. I definitely have watched quite a few superhero movies and like especially in my youth, but I never got into superheroes. I'm not someone who got into all of the Spider-Man and Batman and Superman. I love some of those movies, watch them, but I'm not into them. But I think that the most interesting character that struck a chord with me was Neo from the Matrix. The idea that this is not the real world, and it gets into all sorts of questions on free will and destiny and breaking free from the matrix and seeing reality for what it is. It's got a futuristic sci-fi element to it, lots of existential questions. Neo from the Matrix, not saying that I necessarily would want to be him, right? Keanu Reeves in the Matrix was just kind of this soft-spoken, like kind of a dull character. You know what I mean? Even though he was the one, he wasn't super animated or anything, but I just really resonate with that whole just the whole trip it took me down, right? The psychological mind fuck of it all. So
So, what I find to be interesting about what you just said is that when I think of Neo from the Matrix, that's more or less your style of game. That's what you're attempting to do. So with the Vortex, you're like, okay, so there is the emotional side, then there's the structured side, and you're trying to merge the two to create this like harmony, this fusion of like perfect game where there's a matrix that underpins everything, and you're trying to solve it to the best of your ability. But then that's basically Neo in the Matrix. The world is a computer simulation, and he's actually figured out how to hack the simulation and use it to his own benefit. So I'm not at all surprised to hear you say Neo based on everything you've told me about your system. That's quite interesting.
yeah, I'll say this though too. There's the other side of me too. When you hear me talk and stuff, maybe I sound very methodical and scientific and whatever, but I very much live my life in kind of an artistic way as well. I listen to lots of music and I think through the lens of music a lot as well. I think every time I get my end of year Spotify report, I listen to more music than something like 97% of the world population. And that's not just me putting on Spotify to like rack up my numbers. That's like headphones in, volume cranked up, like active music listening. So I listen to a lot of music, and I fuse that artistic side of it as well. But I think that's kind of more or less what you said too. But anyway, no, that's an interesting observation. Who is your superhero?
Wolverine. I'll tell you why. Because number one, Wolverine ages really slowly. So he's hundreds of years old, but he looks like he's 35 or so. Like, I love that. Number two, Wolverine has a healing factor. So no matter what you do to him, you stab him in the neck, and before he could choke to death on his own blood, his body will heal the damage. Sick. Wolverine's healing factor gives him insane endurance because you know when you exercise, lactic acid builds up in your muscles. His body flushes out that lactic acid. So he could sprint from London to LA or from LA to Washington. So he can just keep going and keep going. He's got animal senses, so he can recognize people by smell. If you if he knew you, he would know your smell. If somebody was impersonating you perfectly, he would know it wasn't them by the smell. He's got really good night vision, things like that. Like I love Wolverine. The retractable claws that just come out his wrist. Like, yeah, that's me.
Yeah, good stuff.
But anyway, yeah. So thank you. It has been a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Kieren. Great chat, man. I'd be happy to do this again with you.